and stories around people who ride buses, stories around people who travel throughout Los Angeles without a car is near and dear to my heart. Now my wife and I, we share a car, but I've been primarily car-free the majority of my adult life. And so having to rely upon my bike or walking or taking public transportation has been a big part of my life, and still is very much a big part of my life. So I'm not from Los Angeles originally. I'm originally from a small little community out by the Salton Sea. But I feel a really deep connection to the city of Los Angeles and to the people here. And I feel that most deeply when I'm on my bike, actually. Because when I'm on my bike, I'm oftentimes reminded of my own past, of my own story, and how I now fit into this place that I now call home, which is Los Angeles. I'm a transportation justice advocate. I'm also a transportation justice story. When I'm working on different policy campaigns or doing organizing or out in the community doing education, it's deeply rooted in my own story, but it's also deeply rooted in my values. You know, when I ride my bike in Southeast Los Angeles and there aren't any bike lanes, I can feel cars passing right by me on my left-hand side, and I feel the chill, on my spine from feeling the breeze of a very close car. And when I ride my bike and I have those types of experiences, I'm often reminded of my childhood. I'm reminded of a moment in my childhood where I tried to cross the street and tried to beat a car across the street. And now as I go back and I look through like trained urban planner eyes, I'm like, you know what, the street could have been changed in a way that would have prevented an 8-year-old from being hit by a car. So every time I'm on my bike and I'm riding through Southeast Los Angeles and I feel cars coming too close for comfort, I'm immediately taken back to what I felt when I was a kid, 8 years old, and I was hit by a car. When I ride my bike in South Central and I see a vacant lot, I'm oftentimes reminded of my own childhood. When I was in 5th grade, my family was displaced, and in the name of the betterment of the community, there was an 8th grade middle school right next door, and they the proposed plan was to expand that middle school for the betterment of the community. But about 20 plus years later, 20 plus years later, and I've recently taken my wife there, 20 plus years later, what sits there is a chain link fence around a vacant lot where my family's home once stood. And so when I ride my bike here in Los Angeles and I see a vacant lot, it's not just a vacant lot to me. It reminds me of my own story in being displaced. About a month ago, I was in South LA, and I was walking with a group of women in their neighborhood, and they were identifying things on the street that need improvement for safety. So they were pointing out, oh, here we need a crosswalk, here we need a stop sign, here is where we need cars to slow down to make it safer for folks in our neighborhood to walk and bike. And as we're walking down the street, we see this beautifully renovated home. And the women are, wow, this is a beautiful home. So they walk up to the porch, and this home is for sale. And one of the women, she pulls out her cell phone, and she's like, I wonder how much this home costs. It's about this, she pulled it out, and she found out this home costs about $750,000. And she mentions that to the other women that are in our group, and they kind of just go silent. One moment they were excited about these great improvements in their community, and then the next, they knew the implications of that. And literally across the street from this newly renovated home, one of the women points out to a parking lot where this couple have an RV and they're sitting outside. And she pointed to that couple and she said, these are folks that actually used to be our neighbors. They lived in an apartment near me, and then they were priced out. And so the conversation continues as we're walking and they're pointing out things that need to improve on their streets. And the conversation, of course, naturally goes to, once our streets improve, does that mean I still have a place in this neighborhood? When I ride my bike on the lower LA River, and I find it hard to breathe because you can like literally smell the poison in the air from the industries. You could smell the diesel exhaust from the close by 7-ton freeway, and it's hard to breathe when you're riding your bike through there. When I ride my bike through that area, I'm often reminded of my childhood as well. I grew up in an environmental justice community where businesses were left unchecked, and it was also an agricultural community where there was pesticide spraying, where there was field burning. And when a kid grows up in that environment, they have compromised lungs. And so when I ride my bike today near the lower LA River and find it difficult to breathe, I'm reminded of my own childhood. So from my legs to my lungs to vacant lots, these are the things that remind me of my childhood, but they also remind me of the poor decisions that a planner, a politician, and the privileged few have made and continue to make. So when I approach this work, it is not one that is, and then we just have a person walking by, but it's not one that is devoid of any type of history or past. It is one rooted in that very strong past for me. And I also don't want to be under any misconception or of that I don't sit in a privileged position today, because I do. And I acknowledge the privilege that I have today. And the privilege is that what my job provides me, what my education has provided me, and my networks have provided me. And that privilege has allowed me to sit across the table from an elected official and their staff, has allowed me to have the phone numbers of high-level staff people at the Department of Transportation or at Metro. It has allowed me to be in rooms that many people in the public never get invited into and have discussions about what should be the future of transportation in this great city and in the county. So I don't neglect my privilege in those spaces. I acknowledge it, but what I also bring into those spaces is a long history of knowing what it's like to be on the other side, and respecting the voices of individuals who remain still on that other side, and ensuring that, one, I continue to listen to folks in the community, and two, at all odds possible, either bring them into the room with me, but there's also very real barriers to getting people in those rooms too. But the three, to ensure that when I am in those spaces, that compromises aren't made that are going to compromise the lives of so many people who do not have that same privilege that I hold in those spaces. And so that's a little bit about my story and why I do what I do and how I do it. And I feel deeply connected to the city every time I ride my bike, because it reminds me of my past, but also it reminds me of my obligation and my responsibility here and now in the city of LA and in the county of LA. So thanks for listening, and I look forward to meeting you out on a bike path, out in a bus, out on the Red Line. I live in the valley where it's really hot. So I hope if you see me out there that you stop me, you share your story with me, and that we can continue in this struggle together. Together we can make biking and walking and public transportation better for all of us here in LA. Thank you.